Welcome everybody, and on behalf of the Academy and the SASI Knowledge Trailblazer, which is Takir, thank you for joining this evening's webinar, the first of many to come. Takir, if I can just start off by letting all your other guests in, there they come.
Yep.
Large numbers, and then make sure that you've got everybody who needs to be on. Andrew, I think, has got both mic and camera rights. Garth, Hans, Peter, they're all good to go, I think. Here's Andrew. Evening, Andrew. So it's over to you, Takir. The ball is in your court. Enjoy, everyone.
No, thank you, Uncle Tom, and welcome, colleagues. Welcome, everyone, to the first SASI Knowledge Trailblazer Fireside chat. We are planning to have a few of these going forward. So this being done in collaboration with SASI Academy. So again, the talks are, aimed at stimulating debate and discussion on the state of our industry, one sector at a time. So we do have a whole range of topics lined up going forward. So do keep an eye out when SASI sends out notices. We will cover a whole range of topics, from concrete to dam engineering, port engineering, new technologies, smart technologies, green hydrogen, water design, road design, a whole range. So everything that involves civil engineering. And if there's room, we would then also look at inviting in our other sister divisions with electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, even PMI, whoever it may be. They will then range going forward. So we're planning to run this every second Thursday of every month. So under the SASI Knowledge Trailblazer, we do have a range of subject matter specialists that assist the committee in getting out content and sharing content with everyone. So for today, today's topic being road and bridge engineering, our subject specialist for this is Mr. Andrew van Grooting from SANRAL. And then as we go along in the months, we'll have then different, champions that will then drive this. So we are then also being joined by colleagues from the South African Road Federation and colleagues from, let's see, Quibus. I think we just need to look for Quibus and then maybe also then activate him, but we'll get to that. And then we also have, our colleagues from the South African Road Traffic Safety Management Association. And then we'll be obviously engaged in discussion. There will be two presentations, one from Andrew and then one from I think it will be Garth Strong. So before we start, I think let me then just allow our panelists just to introduce themselves. We'll start from the top going down. So we've got Andrew, if you want to come through first, and we'll go to the top going down just to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew van Grooting. I'm the senior mentor in SANRAL's graduate development program. So I've got about 60 graduates under me. You must just excuse the noise, please. I'm halfway between Kokstad and an as yet unbooked hotel room. So I'm sitting in a restaurant. There might be a little bit of background noise. I essentially have had about a 30-year career in roads-related engineering. And at the moment, I'm basically employed to run the Road to Registration program for all of SANRAL's bursary graduates. So my presentation today will definitely have a SANRAL slant on it. Thank you.
No, thanks, Andrew. Uncle Tom, I just want to confirm, is sound coming through? Because I see there was a comment talking about sound.
Yeah, no, the sound is all good on my side. I think those that are struggling with sound, normally the easiest way to resolve is to log out and rejoin. That tends to fix it, but sound is strong on our side.
Okay, no, thanks for that. Then we've got Garth Strong. If you can just put your camera on and introduce yourself. You on mute, Garth?
I'm muted, Garth.
Mute. Thank you. I'm muted. I thought the system had muted me. I'm kind of sometimes a bit technologically challenged. We're going to be talking today, obviously, under the banner of the South African Road Traffic Safety Management Association. So the history, my history is just, let's call it road safety products for the last 22 years and trying to convince the authorities and consultants to change their thinking from standard design, which I found a kindred spirit in Andrew. And I think once we get into the actual basis of SARTSMA, how it arrived and what it's doing and what it's done to change standards and to change thinking in road safety. And there's still some other things we're trying to do, which we'll talk about briefly, and then the Q&A can cover quite a lot of it. But I think that's sufficient background on me for the moment.
No, thank you, Garth. Then we've got Hans. If you can introduce yourself, Hans. If you can put your camera on, there you go.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. Hans, I'm currently in private. We've got a private business. We manufacture road signs. I've been involved with reflective sheeting and everything reflective on road furniture for the last 20 odd years. And with Garth on forming the chair group with Peter Cross, who's also our chairman of SARTSMA, also online today, in support of Garth in the presentation, and a short presentation on what SARTSMA does within the industry and trying to upgrade specifications. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy.
No, thanks, Hans. And then we've got Kobus Labuschagne. Can you just introduce yourself as well?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Suppose I'm coming through. I see my own picture, yeah. So
We can see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah, I'm Kobus Labuschagne. My background is very strongly in the traffic engineering side. I spent half of my career possibly in the public services sector, being at the old Pretoria City Council, now it's Tshwane Metro. And in the past 2 decades or more, I've been with the CSR. Also spending my last 2 years before retirement, well, I was retired at the Gauteng Department of Roads and Transport. I'm now the Northern Region Coordinator for the South African Road Federation. Of course, my background, my major interest, my personal interest is road safety. And of course, due to my connection with a lot of people, I get to know many people in all the other industries, road industries as well. Not that much, but at least I'm attached to them. So yes, I'm keen to participate.
Oh, thank you, Kobus. Then we've got Peter Cross. If you can just introduce yourself as well, Peter. Thank you.
You're currently muted. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, we can see now. Thanks.
Yes, I'm Peter Cross, current chairperson of SARTSMA. My background is primarily within standardization. I worked at the SABS for 30 years in the standards division. I also worked within the general mechanical engineering sector, and also in the automotive sector, where I cut my teeth, so to say. Yeah, I want to express our appreciation as SARTSMA in terms of attendance at this event, and indicate how much we feel that we'll progress and learn in terms of the various aspects and the matters that are going to be raised by Garth, which are really very relevant in terms of our organization and matters progressing going forward. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Peter, and thank you to my panelists. I was so excited to get this thing going. I forgot to introduce myself. So I think let me then quickly introduce myself to the colleagues online. My name is Tawkir Ahmed. I'm the head of the Engineering Center of Excellence at the Transnet National Ports Authority in the office of the Chief Engineer. So my portfolio cuts across all 8 commercial ports. And what I've got under my department is I oversee research and development, technical standards and systems, professional development, and asset and energy management, So that's what I then oversee within the TNPA. And at SAIC, as Uncle Tom indicated early on, I am the champion for the Knowledge Trailblazer. And similar role as what I do at Transnet, looking at research, technology, and knowledge that to share, best practice and lessons learned with colleagues. So this being one of the outlets to try and share knowledge and best practices with the industry as a whole. So having said that, colleagues, what we have is that we've got 2 presentations lined up. Andrew will do a presentation. Once he's done with his presentation, and then I think it's Garth will also then have a presentation. And once we're done with the 2, I've got a few questions that I've lined up that we can then ask the different panelists, and there we will then have a discussion amongst ourselves. And I'd like to make it quite robust with the audience as well. So if you have comments, questions you want to put up in between, so I'll do a mix of myself asking questions, us having a discussion amongst the panelists, and taking questions from the audience as well. So we'll make it as interactive as possible. So yeah, I think once the 2 presentations are done, we'll then open up for general Q&A and discussion, and we'll take it from there. So Andrew, if you can from your side, maybe then fly to your presentation. I'll just put my camera off for now. You just on mute, Andrew. Yeah, Andrew, you still on mute?
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
But we've lost your present. There we go.
Yeah. If I can dispense with the camera, it's just that I'm
yeah, no, yeah, should
relying on hotspotting at the moment. Then I'll share my presentation and go for it. It shouldn't be more than 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks, Andrew.
Okay, so Takid and myself and Saisi discussed what should be the first topic, and I said to myself, well, I've been in road engineering for long enough. I can probably make a little bit of sense. So there's the title of my presentation. There's a basic outline, and it's really not more than 20 slides. It's going to be very quick. I'd much rather hear from the audience than give you folks a lecture at 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. So it's history of national roads, just a map of the national road network, some statistics. Just for those who have never been in road engineering in their careers, the subdisciplines and the fields that one gets involved in. And then the library that road and bridge engineers use, and from the SANRAL perspective, the research focus areas. And then number 6, I guess, will just be a general discussion. So I'm not sure if Takid wants us to have a discussion after my slideshow or after all the slideshows, but that's neither here nor there. I'll jump into it. Thanks. So the let's say pre-1990s history of national roads is as put up on the screen, goes back 115 years, I guess. So in 1934, the law on national roads was passed, and it remained in place until 1971. 1935 was obviously a milestone. First meeting of the National Road Council. The scheme comprised 14 routes with a total length of 8,684 kilometers. That was planned. And then in 1938, a decision was made to bitumenize all national roads for the princely sum of £20 million. And in 1943, the first Minister of Transport was appointed. In 1948, the NTC, National Transport Commission, was established to replace the National Roads Council. And in 1954, consulting engineering and contracting services were used to speed up infrastructure delivery, to essentially lay out the network that a lot of us enjoy today. So in 1961, 94% of the original scheme was completed. And if you look at that first bullet, 7,500 odd kilometers and 830 bridges, And this was basically the SANRAL network when SANRAL came about in 1998, some 7,500 kilometers. 43% of work was then done on a contract basis. The government had their own capacity to also design and build roads. Then the extension of the National Road Program from 1961 to 1971. And 1971 to 83, construction and development of the National Thoroughfares Scheme, which included the Garden Route freeways. And then that is the network that SANRAL sits with today. Just before I get into this one, I must pay tribute to a book called The History of National Roads by Bernal C. Fleur. So the map that I've got up at the moment, I'm sure most of you can place yourselves on the map and know most of the en routes. What SANRAL has got in their 4 regions is a total of about 25,000 kilometers. Every now and then we inherit roads from provincial road departments. But on the left-hand side is the big picture in South Africa. There's a lot more gravel roads than surfaced roads. So for those who thought road engineers didn't apply their minds, these are sub-disciplines we get involved in, and I must say it's quite a rewarding career in that it's not just engineering. It has got a lot more to do with people than engineering. Wherever there's a road, there's a community. As you know, our country is suffering from unemployment. There's jobs to be created. There's training. There's all sorts of development to be done. And then item 6 there, land acquisition, a pet subject of mine because it's occupied quite a bit of my time. But you might find that a lot of our road reserves actually are a little bit too narrow. And as we know, there are vast tracts of land across some of our provinces that are under tribal authority, or let's say traditional leadership. And what we find is for any of our road projects where there's an upgrading or widening of sorts, there's a massive effort that has to be undergone in terms of acquiring the land necessary for the road reserve. Then briefly, the road engineers library. These are the go-tos that we normally give to our candidates when they come out of university. So the number 1 there is what we call the TRHs, the TMHs, the 3 urban transport guidelines. I think they went out of print some time ago, and then South African traffic signs manual. And that's really just a handful, but it's the basics. And then still the library. I've got about 4 of us, sort of equal length. And I think it's not some up to date and some are really outdated. So constant
Andrew, we're losing you. I'm not sure if it's Andrew. Sorry,
same here.
Yeah, we seem to be losing you, Andrew. If you can, I'm not sure if it's the foot traffic in the restaurant or your Bluetooth is not working, but you are breaking up quite a bit.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. Can you hear us now? I think his connection is struggling on his side there. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Hi, Andrew. Okay. I think we'll try and get hold of, let me try and get hold of Andrew on the side. Just give him a call quickly. Hi, Uncle Tom. So Andrew says just trying to get an alternative connection. So if we can just hold on for a minute, he'll be back with us. He's almost done. So just allow apologies, colleagues. We do have technical glitches now and then. So just a minute, and we'll get Andrew back again.
Takia, are you monitoring the chat?
I'll come through the chat as well. So yeah, I'll have a look at the chat as well, Uncle Tom, and I'll pick up on some questions there as well. I'll just double check there as well. So just to the question in terms of the next presentation, let's give it a minute. If Andrew doesn't come back, then we will then move on to the next presentation. It looks like he's trying to connect on his side.
Hi there, Takia. Is that better?
Much better, much better.
Okay. Vodacom to MTN has worked. Sorry about that, folks.
No worries, no worries.
I've just been out on sites all week, in between sites, so it's a bit tricky for me. Okay, so let me just carry on. There's not too much to say other than that there's about 50 of these manuals that are currently in use. And if you look at the right-hand column, some of them do go back quite far and need some serious revisions. So the point I'm trying to get across is there's a very large body of knowledge that governs the road and bridge industry. And then I'm just going to finish off with what SANRAL are doing about it. We've got a research program that's been in existence for about 5 years. I think we're on round 2 at the moment. And within most of these research focus areas, we actually have some of these manuals that need a concerted effort in terms of updating. So we've got researchers that have obviously tendered on the work. These are public tenders that go out. And we're hoping to update quite a lot of the body of knowledge. And Taki, that is my presentation done. Thank you.
No, thanks for that, Andrew. And thank you for the oversight and overview on terms of now national roads and standards and whatnot. And I'm hoping that will then spark some good discussion with the panel. So colleagues, I think that just for interest of discussion, then let's get the second presentation on. And then after the second presentation, then we can then have a combined robust discussion. Garth, I think you were going to also put up a presentation from your side as your SARTSMA, just to give us an overview of your work. If you can just come online. There you go.
I'm sharing.
Yes, you are sharing. We can hear you and we can see your screen.
Okay. It's actually very interesting because there's a slide that Andrew showed there, which is a very good introduction to SARTSMA, and that was the South African Road Traffic Signs Manual. And we're not saying that SARTSMA came out of that, but it's all to do with, started out all to do with signs. So if we look at an overview of SARTSMA as it is today, and it very much gets back, I think, and unfortunately, Gary Saville, who started it and stepped down as chair at the end of 2023, is in Australia at the moment. It would be very good to have him here, because a lot of people, I think, know Gary, and he actually did a presentation at last year's SACI Northern Region, I think it was the AGM, on reflectivity. And Gary's done lectures all over the countryside on reflectivity. So the whole thing started with the road traffic signs, and then the Road Traffic Signs Manufacturers Association. As you can believe, and I'm not a reflectivity expert, so I'm not going to talk much about this. Reflectivity is a serious problem out on the roads, and the work that's been done by Gary and then by the members really changed a lot of thinking and ultimately into COTO. So in 2016, there was a recognition that it needed to change from the South African Road Traffic Signs Manufacturers Association so it needed to change to an association representative of all aspects of roadside furniture. So everything you see on the sides of the roads is really roadside furniture. So SARTSMA, as the South African Road Traffic Safety Management Association, came into being in 2016 and then became heavily involved in the development of COTO standards in sections 11.4, 11.6, and 11.7. One of the things that we all as members of SARTSMA sign and agree to, a condition of membership. So any SARTSMA member is then held, let's call it liable, responsible by SARTSMA to adhere to standards, maintain a high standard of design and manufacture of products, and freely submit to an investigation. So if anyone has a problem in roadside furniture where items are supplied by a SARTSMA member, SARTSMA will assist in sorting out any of those problems. The SARTSMA structure is pretty simple. There's an executive committee, which is the chairman. That's now Peter Cross. It was Gary Saville for probably 10, 15 years. The working group chairs, and then the two directors. So working group 1 is the road signs, very much SAN standards orientated. SADC work on the SADC manual, COTO standards, and then industry guided stocks. So key to all of this in terms of road signs and road markings are the SAN standards and COTO specifications. So working group 2 is road markings. Again, SAN standards apply, COTO standards or specifications apply. And then working group 3, which is really the newest boy on the block in this game, is the performance-based road restraint systems, which we'll talk a little bit about to give you some examples on that. There is a SAN standard for performance-based road restraint systems, but it's not specified in COTO. COTO specifies an American standard and 2 American standards and a European standard. And we're very particular in terms of what happens with those. We try and give engineers as much advice as possible. And then we have worked a little bit on working group 4, which really we think about as safety management. We have had discussions with various engineers who have indicated they would be available to come in and assist us if there is a requirement for the safety management side. So that's the overview of the various structures. So I'm going a little bit back to front. I'll get to the 11.4 in a minute. This is a cut and paste of COTO, the introduction to COTO, the scope for COTO, 11.6 road signs, specifications. It talks obviously about SADC. It talks about the South African Road Traffic Signs Manual. As I said, that's a brilliant referral, because that, even though it's still not totally to date, still talks about SAN standards, and then COTO talks about SAN standards in a much more detail. What is very interesting is that Section A 11.6.7.2 requires a roadside manufacturer to be affiliated with a recognized traffic sign manufacturer association, such as SARTSMA, or a permit holder under SANS 1519-2. That goes back to the fact that engineers, particularly engineers, have someone they can come back to actually have input in making sure that what is being supplied under the various umbrella or bodies or working groups actually does comply. So working group 1, this booklet is actually available from SARF. It's a booklet that was prepared a couple of years ago and handed out at quite a few seminars. It's a quick, concise road signs guide. Kobus, you can actually do a little bit of a selling job on that. These, I think, were available at 50 Rand each. From SARF, and it's a very handy book to carry around. And then there's a big push at the moment on delineators. As you can see, are the delineators on your worksite legal? There's a revised standard, which will soon be published for comment. And there is a guideline that's come out from SARTSMA. This can be picked up on the SARTSMA website. Working group 2, 11.7, road markings and road studs. Again, total cut and paste out of 11.7. The scope, again, SADC documents, South African Road Traffic Signs Manual, and COTO. And everything goes back to what is prescribed. Majority of Working Group 1 and Working Group 2 are SAN standard, so you have the SAN standard to fall back on each and every one of these. So we have road markings, we have road studs, we have barrier reflectors, and we have everything else under that. Again, this can be picked up on the SARTSMA website. The interesting one, which hopefully will generate a bit of debate today, is 11.4, which is road restraint systems. And this covers the supply, installation, maintenance of various types of road restraint systems in accordance with specifications and details shown on drawings or specified by the engineer. Now, what we talk about is we talk about performance-based systems. So what is quite interesting is that vehicle restraint systems are divided into systems based on what we call SANS 1350, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's not a SANS 1350 specification. SANS 1350 is the specification for the manufacture of guardrail, the W-beam, and then the bolts and nuts and everything else. And there's another SANS standard for posts. The system, the W-beam guardrail system, comes out as mainly out of standard drawings. Now, on performance-based systems, you've got the EN standard, which has been accepted by SANS as parts 1, 2, 3, and 5. So we have a SANS standard for that, but COTO refers to EN 1317 and or ASHTO-MASH. ASHTO-MASH and NCHRP 350 are American standards. And what it talks about here, and this is where it becomes very interesting, it talks about the risk threshold as determined by the designer. So what it means, in effect, is that the designer must look at the risk. A risk assessment should be done, and the designer should then decide what needs to be there to ensure that no vehicle goes over a precipice or through the bridge or through into the veld. Then we talk again about SANS 1350, again out of the standard, but that's again manufactured to that standard, and then standard drawings. And then the other thing we talk about under these systems are truck-mounted attenuators, and that's specified in chapter A, 1 to 5 to 7. Now, just generally quickly, and I want to show you something possibly more interesting. You've got concrete barriers, you've got guardrails, you've got crash cushions, you've got attenuators, truck-mounted attenuators, and you've also got wire rope. These are the systems that come into SARTSMA Working Group 3. But what really needs to happen, and this will tell you a story, is you need to know what you're designing for. You need to actually know what will happen when a vehicle crashes into a barrier. And this is what tells the story. That was a very expensive crash test. And that was a 38-ton articulated truck crashing into a precast concrete barrier system fixed to a concrete base, 65 k's an hour, angle of 20 degrees. And the other thing that's quite interesting is when you look at various road restraint systems, the center of gravity is quite interesting in what you put up. So that vehicle has an impact energy of 725 kilojoules. So when that thing hits, that's what's going, it's got to stop. It's got to hold 725 kilojoules of impact energy. To put it in perspective, our standard guardrail system, 3.81 meter post spacing, falls somewhere into the 82 to 127 kilojoules, depending on which one you use. So we're putting up mostly all over the country, and majority of it is fine. The majority of it's fine. It will retain or redirect the vehicles, but in a lot of cases, the risk assessment should determine that the standard guardrail is not good enough. Because when you look at a loaded taxi, a loaded quantum, impacting into guardrail or whatever it is, that vehicle has got an impact energy depending on how much it's loaded with and how many people and what speed it's traveling. It can be up to 288 kilojoules of impact energy. So you have to look at what you're designing for. What do you want to restrain and or redirect? And this is one of the big things. And in each and every one of the tests, now this test that you saw there with that truck, every test that is done, a 900 kilogram vehicle is driven into, or not driven in, is actually pulled into the same thing, which we call a TB11 test. So that's a 900 kilogram vehicle, to see what happens when a small passenger vehicle hits the same barrier. Whatever that barrier is, it has to be impacted by the small passenger vehicle to see what will happen to the people in that, so that we can actually say it's going to kill people or it's not. And that's what it's all about, performance-based systems. I think in a nutshell, that's pretty much what we want to talk about. SARTSMA's details are there, the website's there. Obviously, there'll be a bit of Q&A. And I think, Takia, for the moment, that's really about all. Hopefully, we can come back to anything in a Q&A.
Yeah. No, thank you, Garth, for that. I think let me put my camera on here as well. Then I'll just ask my panel members from your side, you can also then put on your cameras as well. No, thank you for that. So yeah, I think colleagues, is one can argue two vastly different presentations, but I mean still related at the same time. It all deals with road engineering and the like. So I've got maybe a few questions from the presentations that have come up that I can ask the two presenters, and then we can then also lean on our other panelists on the side for comments as well. And colleagues, do put up your hand if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. I think, let me see on my side here. Let me start now with just a comment question from my side. So, Garth, looking at one of your last few slides, where you talk about now the heavy vehicles, the crash test, and looking at the speeds that's they're running at. one trend that we are seeing, I think, within the coastal cities, and not only coastal cities, but coming from the mining areas, because of now, challenges on the rail. You've got a lot of these coal trucks and manganese trucks that are running on the roads now. And you talk about the 30 tons in your slide, but these guys are not pulling 30 tons. Each trailer has 60 tons worth of ore, and they pull two trailers, so it makes it a 120. And I've just recently in Trailblazer, I've seen trucks running with 3 trailers, so that's 180 tons in motion. And these guys, they don't take a little stroll down the road. I think for them, the quicker they can get to the ship and offload and come back and pick up another load, that's how they make the money on the number of trips they do in a day. So that goes to say that the guys are not going 65 k's an hour. They're going at least 80 k's an hour and more. So I mean, this is also becomes a concern from a safety point of view, because I mean this is a heavy load in motion and very difficult to stop. And again, we can try with try and police it, but the guys, unfortunately, they don't comply sometimes. And maybe it's a bit of a I don't know if it's a tough question, a difficult question, but if we had to come up with, I mean, do we have any solutions in terms of now your restraint systems that could counter against such heavy loads? Is it something that we need to consider? Seeing the current trend these days.
Together, they have actually done tests in both the States and in Europe with, let's call it similar to our Interlink system. And I've got another video which I'll dig out and show. And one of the biggest impacts is the secondary impact, or the tertiary. When you have a triaxial impact, now you saw that from an in-cab view. I've got another one which shows a frontal view. And when you look at a triaxial, there are 3 points of impact. The first axle, or the steering axle, hits, and then because of the shape, the F shape or the New Jersey shape, because of the shape, the wheels start guiding it away. The second impact are the second set of axles, the trailing axles not the trailing axles, the axles where the hitch point is on the truck, on the horse. And then the biggest impact comes from the third set of axles. In other words, the trailing axles on the trailer. That whips round and has a huge impact into the barrier. Now, with the Interlink type trailer, they don't have that same. There is similar force. As I say, they've done tests. They haven't actually committed to doing crash tests. A crash test costs something like 500,000-600,000 euros. And Europe has determined at the moment that it's not a particular problem.
Within their context, maybe not.
Beg your pardon?
I say within the European context, maybe not. I think they got better controls, but unfortunately, in our context, it's a bit different.
No, sure. But if you see some of the impacts of an Interlink overturning, and there's quite a number of, because we talk to crash scene investigators and things like that quite a lot, and we see the results. And inevitably, it's the fact that the first rig or first part of the rig starts to turn and it pulls the second part over. This is something. In fact, if you want to look at that, you could have a session with. We've got a very good crash scene investigator who did some tests on guardrail out of his own initiative the other day to see what it does with pedestrians. So that would rather, I say, come from them. We can get you information from Europe, but at the moment they're not particularly worried about the impact. And yes, it is a different scenario. It is a first world environment, but they still, in the eastern parts of Europe, they're just as bad as we are.
I can imagine. Thanks for that, Garth, for that insight. Andrew, just your views on the same question from a Sanral point of view, because I'm sure for you, especially a Sanral, it must be quite a nightmare.
Yeah. So look, I come from a design background, and what we're busy doing is we're trying to let's say change the mindset of how one approaches your road restraint systems. often at the end of producing your tender drawings, you decide where the guardrails are going to go. So what we're saying, well, it's not just guardrails. If you've got 20,000 vehicles a day and you're on the outside of a curve on the edge of a mountain, a guardrail is probably not going to be an appropriate solution. There's also a tool that we use in the academy. It's still in beta version that actually one inputs the geometry, the traffic, and so on, and it does tend to spit out the economic benefit cost ratio, if you like, because all the money we spend on upgrades, with public money, I'm sure it's similar to Transnet, needs to have some kind of a return on investment proof, if you like. Yeah. So it's very much part of what I, let's say, campaign for in the design environment.
Yeah. No, it's a very fine line and a fine balance, because we can very easily over design to try and compensate for risk, but then that does come at a cost. So it's one of those fine lines. And look, I think when it comes to these kind of things, we need to start, or not need to start, but engage more with other authorities, other government departments, on the policing side, on the just at least traffic control side, at least try and control the movement of these heavy vehicles. So yeah, and I mean it's quite a dynamic field and environment that not only yourself as an engineer designing, you need to look at the bigger picture as well. And just again, driver behavior. I stand to be corrected, but I think when it comes to our road accidents, that's the biggest factor in terms of the number of accidents and deaths that we see on the road, just pure negligence and driver behavior. Again, something very difficult to try and fix at the end of the day.
Takia, can I just very quickly show a very short video illustrating what I'm talking about there?
Okay. Sure.
Garth, is there sound?
Is there sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, sound. We didn't get sound come through.
So when you did share screen, did you click on use computer sound?
Probably not.
Yeah, so just go unshare.
Okay.
And as you click on it, right near the top, there we go. It says include computer sound. Click on that button. It'll change to blue. And then go back to your desktop and start from scratch so we can hear the bangs and the crashes and the... Thank you.
I don't know if I've still done it right. Include computer sound. Okay, there.
Yes.
Okay. Let me run it again. And then it goes through in slow-mo, saying the exact thing. Now this is a freestanding 725 kilojoule system. I don't think you'll find sound now, but these are what somebody's obviously decided they want to see how far that moves. If you've got a parapet there, pedestrian parapet or whatever, I don't quite know. This is quite an old one. This was done in 2003. But if you see what happens with that trailer whipping around, now the moment you put the third, let's call it the second trailer on or whatever, you don't get that same whip around. And they've done, because Takia, what they do before they go to this expense, they actually do a full finite element analysis, computer simulation of the whole thing. So it's not just guesswork as to what they think happens. They actually have a very, very good idea of what will happen. And it's done. We actually have a facility in this country who can do it. They've done work for Sanral before, but you can see there what happens.
Yeah.
That's the biggest danger.
Yeah. Now you can see that, and I mean, one can then imagine now with the loose material on the back, I mean, that will go flying all over the place as well. Just maybe touch on the last comment of yours. You mentioned the computer simulation, and I just want to check from your side. Then Andrew, I'll come back to you on the same question. When it comes to smart technologies and the new talk of the day being digital twinning and simulation, so what's happening within that space, and in terms of then what you just mentioned now, the simulation in a computer environment, how robust is that system, and how can I say the results you get out? Is it a very reliable type of information that can give you as accurate as you can in terms of real world environment? Just some comments on that, Garth.
Look, the software is there's LS Dyna, which has been around for a long time, and then there's that's an American system that I think Sanral have definitely used, and they've done simulations on various barriers and products and stuff like that, and it's being developed all the time. What we do as a company, we use Grutz University, who obviously are developing the whole time, and then when you go, obviously it's a progress, because as I said, the crash test itself can cost up 400,000 or 500,000 euros. So you'll spend 50 or 60,000 euros doing the finite element analysis first, and then you go out and do the actual test. And what is quite interesting is there's probably less than 10% difference between the actual the finite element analysis and the actual.
So obviously it's quite very credible at the end of the day.
Yeah, very credible, very credible. But what's come out quite interestingly, and because the other things that are tested, for example, are transitions. So if you're going along and you're approaching a bridge, and you want to go from, let's say, steel to concrete, they will test that, and the angle of the impact will actually be at where the two join. So the vehicle will impact at that point. And we've got one that goes back a couple of years where the simulation showed a deflection of, let's say, 1 meter, and the actual crash test was about 1.2. So they went back to the drawing board to change things. So it's because you can't put a product on the market until you know that it's going to work as crash tested.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, when it comes to simulation and testing, very important that we need to get to that. So Andrew, coming to you with a not the exact same but similar question, and I think maybe more focused on smart technologies. Is there anything specific that you as Sanral are doing within the space when it comes to digital twinning? I recall we did, I think briefly in our own discussion, I think on Monday, you did mention something about digital twins. It just maybe give us a bit of insight in terms of what is Sanral doing in that space.
Yeah, sure. So it's not related really to the discussion that we're having on safety, but digital twinning is really about asset management. And since we own a fairly large network of public assets, I'm heading up a task team where I'm using some of my graduates on site to really try and come out of sight without a roll of 200 drawings marked up with a red pen, so to speak, but rather try and get some intelligent digital record of what's been built, and let's say the quality of the elements, geospatially accurate and that kind of thing, so that in years to come, and it's really going to be a decades-long culture change, if you like, digital culture change, that we can have all of our assets represented digitally as opposed to flat PDF drawings. Yeah.
Okay. So at least it's an innovation that Sanral is looking at. Obviously from the asset management side, hopefully will then help you to better manage assets. And I think just from my side, also from the port side, also looking at something similar in terms of software. And the challenge, or what I foresee, and I'm sure the same for yourself as Sanral, is that the volume of assets that you have and the vastness of assets, it becomes, the database is large. Managing is large. It's so easy for you to miss something small, and before you know it, the road is falling apart, and maybe just forgot about it because it's on a vast database. So yeah, I think bring in new technology or smart technology to assist is obviously one of the ways to go. Just on that now, Garth, now when it comes to road safety, and I'm just thinking how to package this question now. Asset management, is it something that you also have a look at in terms of now the all your road furniture? I'm sure there's something that you put out there for the your members in terms of best practice and whatnot. Are you looking into anything down that line, Garth?
It's difficult for us to do that because the sign. Let's take signs for example. Signs are then purchased by the contractor; they own them, and or purchased by government. The same thing. So you've got permanent signs, temporary signs. There was a discussion at some stage about tagging, but it's not something that we as an organisation have been asked to get involved in. There's been talk, but that's about all.
Okay. So there's obviously a bit of a, even call it a gap or a space for us to perhaps maybe look into it one of these days. Yeah, if there's a need for that.
So yeah, we offered it to Sanral on a project we did with them recently. This is from a company perspective, and that was with a whole lot of barriers that we made for them. And the problem was to try and integrate a system that controls, let's call it loose assets with fixed assets. But it's still going to have to come at some stage because there's a lot of them out there. Loose assets, if you could call it that.
Yeah, no, but I can imagine, I think it comes back down to the, same, and I'm sure Andrew on your side and our side will be the same, that the vastness of assets. And I'm sure, you're talking about, I think you said 25,000 kilometers of road. I can just imagine how many road signs and, barriers and a whole lot that you would have. And it's, again, to manage that vastness of assets can be quite challenging at times.
Yeah, we've taken the approach of you've got to start somewhere. So all of this, let's call it the strategic infrastructure projects along the N3 and N2 in KZN. If an asset is being upgraded substantially to the extent that they're actually demolishing old bridges, as you've seen at Westville Interchange, that kind of thing, then that is the golden opportunity to capture what's just been built digitally.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely we'll build up an asset database in a format that is compatible with a modern way of running a road and bridge agency.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Andrew. And I think, as I know Uncle Tom likes to say, you eat an elephant a bit at little bits at a time. So in that case, I mean, that's what you are essentially doing as you go along. So let me just pick up on some comments and questions on the chat. I see there was a comment that says from Dina, will it not be most practical in terms of safety and efficiency for heavy ore to be transported on rail rather than on roads? So I would agree that is correct. And I don't want to speak on behalf of my sister division, Transit Freight Rail, but I know, I mean, and you would see in the media, derailments because of sabotage. You've got now the theft of overhead cables. So there has been challenges on that side, from a safety and security point of view. And I guess with the high prices of ore internationally, that's also driving the investment into trucks and people just running more trucks. But yeah, it's a tricky question. Would you want to comment on that, Garth, Andrew? Just your views. Okay.
Yeah, look, the rail versus road debate is happening all the time. The last thing I heard was from the private sector talking about inland ports, where the ports are getting clogged up. So why not do the transfer 100 k's inland? Now that's fine, but talk is cheap. And also, as you'll know, Takeda, there's talk about letting slots or certain segments of the network to the private sector. Some kind of a concession similar to what we do on our toll roads. But with a lot of these things, there's great ideas in people's heads, but we want to see something happening. Because our roads are battling.
No, I can imagine that, it's we need to improve on the rail. And you would see now that I think the new movements within the governance space or the government space, so to say, is now the ERT bill. And I think the ERT bill impacts both SANRAL, I think Transnet and other transport sectors from my understanding. So I still need to study the document in more detail. But what I understand is that from a transit freight rail point of view, they are splitting into a rail owner and a rail operator. And I think with that, now the concept of slots, similar to what you see in the European market and I think the American market as well, where you contract slots within the rail system, and then with the capacity they put you down there. So again, I don't want to comment too much on that. I'm not too familiar with the concept. Don't want to misrepresent those documents or whatever's being discussed in that space. Let me see. I think on the okay. So one question here from Lorato. How does one determine risk threshold? So I guess this would be in terms of the road safety on your side, Garth.
Actually, Andrew can probably answer that better because they've now, we just quick digression. We tried to coerce SANRAL into using a European-based road restraint risk assessment process way back in 2010. And there just weren't enough people to work on it. But subsequent to that, Andrew can tell you about the South African equivalent of that. So there is a program. You can actually go out and do a proper risk assessment. Kobus will also tell you about that from a road safety auditor's perspective. But I think RAPSA from Andrew's perspective is the answer.
Yeah. Andrew, would you want to float a response?
Yeah, I actually did write something in response to Lorato. And
I see that.
If one is in Gauteng during July, there's a conference called the South African Transport Conference, and we're booking out a whole day in what we call the Engineering for Safe Systems Forum. So if one wants to spend a day learning about road safety engineering, it's probably would be well spent. So that's a SATC, South African Transport Conference. You can find it on their website. It's an annual event.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Andrew. So I'm going to pick on a few questions also from the chat, and I see, Andrew, you have been responding, but I think we can just discuss it as well. So maybe just a question to both Garth and then Andrew, just your views and opinion. So there's a question from Theo Lagrange. The design standard for a guardrail is 530 millimeters. What is the minimum height that a guardrail will still be effective? Okay, not related, but just one thing that comes to mind is that I think when Cape Town had very strong winds a few weeks back, I mean, we saw videos of trucks just blowing over, and I was thinking to myself, why doesn't the authority just build like higher guardrails or like a tunnel so trucks don't? But anyways, maybe not related, but yeah, just maybe give comments on that question regarding the at what height will guardrails still be effective, Garth?
It's a bit of an open-ended question because you go back to the center of gravity of the vehicle. Now, it will, because when you go, Andrew's probably better qualified to answer this, but when you go back to when 530, the median height of guardrail used to be 530, that was when the first overlay was put down, the road, the pavement was done, everything was put down, and then it was fine. Then they would come along and put a 20 or 30 mil overlay on that. So the median height of guardrail then immediately became 500. So now and we've seen this on some incredible roads where you think the guardrail is like, if you're lucky, 300. So the guardrail never gets, and by guardrail, we're talking about the W-beam system. So the first thing you've got to realize is that it's not specifically designed for purpose. It's a standard drawing. It's been put in there, and it's there everywhere. Andrew's on a mission to try and change that, and it's quite an interesting one because unfortunately, and I'm talking to a lot of engineers, I know the thought is not what are we trying to stop going through there. Our standard drawings apply, and it's easier to use a standard drawing than it is to go back and do anything else. So, but going back to the question of height, the trend internationally, and SANRAL is doing this now, the new median height of guardrail is 610.
Okay.
So that's the new median height of guardrail. And that's, I don't know quite where that came from, but if you look at studies in the US, some of them are slightly higher than that, because if your SUVs and everything that are coming out of the States are a lot higher.
Higher,
So they're now
yeah.
looking at, and then you've also got to make sure that you don't have it too high so that a low slung sports car goes underneath it.
Doesn't go on. Yeah. Unless we just double up on the guardrails, one for the low cars and one for the high cars. Yeah. Andrew, do you want to just maybe give some insight into that? And then also now the indication of 610, I don't know if you would maybe give us a bit of insight in terms of how did you determine that? And just your plans and SANRAL just in this space. You on mute there.
Well, do you mind just taking this?
Sorry, Andrew?
You're breaking.
I've just got a bit of background noise at the moment that I can't avoid.
No worries.
Do you mind helping out? I see Quibus also had his hand up earlier.
Yeah.
I think he's given up. Maybe we should draw him in if you want.
Yeah, no worries. Quibus, you had your hand up. I think you wanted to comment maybe on the previous chats of discussion. You can come through, Quibus.
Okay, yes, thank you. I just thought, this is such an important discussion, particularly the road rail issue, much more than many people think. Because I remember as a young engineer, one of the things when you design a road, you look at the traffic composition. Then you have typically you have something like 5% or 10% trucks. So if you would typically design for 5%, in extreme cases you will go 10%. Now, of course, those numbers have significantly increased. So what is the implication is we're all looking forward to get our rail system back in operation. But even if we get it right, how long will it take before we start seeing less trucks on our roads?
Yeah.
And that means that we're part of the risk assessment formula is to look at and it's all about probabilities, and of course economics as well. But based on probabilities, you will have to design for the additional trucks that are on the road. So there's definitely a serious cost implication. The fact you're exposed to risk. So that means that how should we look at our procedures then and the standards if we think that we're going to be sitting with the situation where we don't have 10% trucks, but even that one road is 50% trucks.
Yeah.
It's quite a conundrum issue. And recently we've seen a bus going over a bridge rail system, killing something like 45 people. And so we have a serious problem that we have to face. So that's just a comment that I wanted to make.
Yeah. No, thanks, Quibus, and I know it's a real issue, and I think it becomes a problem. And exactly like you said, and when the infrastructure was originally designed, or let's talk about roads, rail, and ports. There was a specific model, and with big, heavy bulk needing to go through rail, and lighter stuff through trucks on roads and whatnot. And just from our point of view as Transit Ports Authority, we also see the challenges in that. And if I could just use, let's use Richards Bay for example. The port wasn't designed to cater for the volume of trucks that it is seeing these days. The focus there was more on rail, and because now the rail coming in is not as effective as it used to be. You get all the volumes that go onto the roads, and the road comes, the trucks coming in, and very heavy trucks. So again, when the port was originally designed, it wasn't designed for the volume of trucks, and it wasn't designed for the weight of the trucks. And what happens then? Obviously, the roads start failing within the ports, and you end up with a congestion. And then if you look, and I'm sure everyone knows it quite famously in the media, you've got kilometers and kilometers of trucks just lined up outside the port, and it creates havoc for the community as well. So definitely something that needs to change, and focus needs to be put on trying to get back to rail. Okay, no, thanks for that, Quibus. Let me then move on to one more comment on the group. I see from, I don't know if Andrew, you want to just maybe for everyone's benefit, just to respond back again. See Vedant Jugoth, is an old colleague of mine. We go back almost 10, 15 years. He says here now the rester beds and truck stops. Are there any other alternatives when it comes to heavies? Do you want to just comment on that, Andrew, from your point of view as Sanral?
Was that the one from
Vedant on
Vedant,
the rester beds?
Yeah, so yeah, look, arrestor beds are, I mean, we've all seen them. One thing I did learn designing one many years ago is that what we used to call pea gravel, the aggregate that you put into the actual bed itself, needs to stay maintained, because else it's not going to stop the vehicle. So yes, of course they have the use. Unfortunately, I don't have statistics as to how many arrestor beds have caught how many trucks over so many years and that. Compulsory truck stops are also very important. I mean, those of you who know Pretoria will remember the horrific accidents that used to happen on what used to be Potgieter Street going into town. And then they put a compulsory truck stop there, and if you can force trucks to stop, test their brakes before they proceed, that's obviously a good intervention.
Yeah. So again, more intervention from the traffic authorities to try and be a bit more robust within that space. Thanks. Okay, so let me just have a look at my notes here. That one or two questions I wanted to ask. Garth, just with respect to your working groups that you indicated early on, so you were busy with a few working groups. Can I just check now, who normally initiates these working groups? Is that something that yourself as an organization would do on your own? And what is the link back to SANS and Department of Transport and other regulatory authorities? Do you link back to them, or is this just something that yourself as an organization you do for your own members? Just if you can give us a bit of insight into that.
Now, we're involved with, and I can't remember all of the committees, but Peter Cross is obviously now going to take over from Gary, but Gary was involved on majority of these things. So there is very intense via SABS itself and via a couple of DOT, Department of Transport committees and others, where the interaction goes back. There's one big one that's just been going for a while, is on the fluorescent yellow signage for hazard markers. And that's been an extremely interesting exercise over the last several years to try and get that accepted by the various authorities. But you get different authorities saying different things as to who. So that was the old white and red. So the idea was to go yellow and red, and then fluorescent yellow and red, so that it really stands out as you're going into a hazardous situation. And that took, in fact, I don't even think it's been resolved yet, because too many different government entities have say in what ultimately goes through on the road. But that's where the interaction takes place. It's there all the time.
Yeah. So there at least is some form of alignment with the various entities, because at the end of the day, you wouldn't want to do things in isolation as well. You'd want as comprehensive as possible. Yeah.
Peter might want to comment on that, but each working group is aligned to its discipline, if you like.
Yeah.
Then if there is an issue, particularly Koto, for example, the man on the screen is responsible for Chapter 11. So we have a lot of interaction. All right, it's not final, but we talk to Sanral a lot on Koto. The other problem we do have, though, is that other government entities haven't fully embraced Koto, so they're still working with Colta. So that's a problem. But where they're working with Koto, it's fairly easy. And when we get the engineers to accept that Koto is really the way to go, it makes life a lot easier. And then if we have a problem, we would then go through to whichever body if necessary, right to the, let's call it the engineering executive at SANRAL. So we have access to the various executives to try and get something done. And we're also very involved, Kobus knows this, with the SAF Road Safety Committee. So there's a lot of government people on that. RTMC is there, all those sorts of bodies. So there's interaction on all of those fronts.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I think let's take Peter, his comment as well. Then I'm going to come back to you also on Koto and Kolto, Andrew. Peter, you can come through.
Well, thanks, Takia. I think Garth has largely covered what I wanted to say. But yes, we do have the 3 working groups at this point in place. They each deal with the specifics around the scope of activities in terms of the title of each committee, as indicated on the appropriate slide that Garth put up earlier. And yes, we do have consistent and constant interactions in terms of attendance of meetings with the various government entities involved. And obviously that then maintains the flow of information both ways. And we attend relevant meetings at the SABS in terms of ensuring that the standards meet the criteria that our members have laid down, in order to ensure that from a standards perspective, that everybody's on the same page, and that SARTSMA is ensuring that its members are fully conversant with the standards, understand them, and apply them as required.
And just now also then, Peter, then when you just say now your working group has now concluded their study, and then just the rollout of that, maybe I might have missed the comments from Garth early on, but then the document that you produce, where does that end up? And it does then from the government side, do they take this, and then at what point do they make this a national standard or just a national best practice to adopt? Or is it something that we still need to work on and try and get government to adopt these best practices that we do end up with? So again, the end result of your working groups, what's typically the way forward from there?
Takir, I think we're talking about a number of issues here. The one is from an SABS perspective, we attend SABS working groups which deal with technical specifics and realities in terms of South African national standards. The working groups that reside under SARTSMA are technical working groups dealing with technical issues that SARTSMA believes needs our attention and also serves the needs of our members. So the two are interrelated, but not intimately so. They have a loose relationship with one another as far as the SABS activities are concerned and the concerns of the actual SARTSMA working groups. Garth can perhaps give a little bit more meat around the actual activities, for example, around Working Group 3, what we've been pursuing under Working Group 3, because Garth is Working Group 3 chair, Hans is Working Group 1 chair, and might be able to give, or will be able to give us further background in terms of that. Other than that, again, yes, those working groups are technical in nature under SARTSMA and deal with relevant technical matters that SARTSMA needs to provide guidance to its members on. And it also then utilizes membership within the organization to create those discussions and come up with relevant solutions pertinent to SARTSMA's activities.
Okay. Then I guess at least, giving feedback to the SABS is then that link back from a technical expertise point of view in terms of standards that needs to be updated and the like. No, thanks for that.
What we also need to understand is obviously from a national standards perspective, those working groups are then populated by relevant members drawn from industry and government. We actually then give technical input to those documents. And at the end of the day, that document needs to be followed by industry, but they're not necessarily compulsory in the mandate. So following national standards needs to be mandated via, for example, the association. The association needs to buy into those standards and then stipulate and request and create an environment within which we serve our members and our clients utilizing the national standards concerned.
Yeah.
I hope that's given some information or background in terms of our activities.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Peter. Then at least it brings better clarity in terms of the value add that comes from SOTSMA and back into the different standards and the like. Now to Andrew, as now everyone call it client and an authority as well. And as Garth mentioned early on, is that they're busy with Koto, but some government entities are still using Koto. And if you can give us a bit of insight, Andrew, in terms of then who needs to enforce if it comes to getting rid of Koto and going Koto, whatever it may be, but just standards. Because I think with yourself, you report to Department of Transport. So from Department of Transport side, would they not need to enforce things on their side? I don't just maybe commentary around that, Andrew.
Yeah, so look, with Koto, the problem is they don't get around the table often enough, but there is an email address that anyone using Koto can email their comments to. And we did receive quite a few comments from folks. Sorry, I'm just waiting for the Ollie to pass the restaurant. There are quite a few, there were lots of comments coming from road safety equipment manufacturers, because these are products with let's call it detailed specifications and that kind of thing. So the draft standard was issued in 2020. That's Koto 2020 standard spec for road and bridge works. Word around our corridors is it's going to take another year or two for industry to apply it and make real comment, because it's only when something happens on a construction site or when something costs a whole lot more than you thought it would because there was misinterpretation of a payment clause or the document hasn't really been bedded down in the minds of practitioners and contractors. It's only really when you've gone through those tests with these new documents that it can evolve to a final standard. So I'd encourage everyone who's using it. Well, I'd encourage everyone who's not using it to use it, because I mean there are people who are resisting. I think there are still municipalities using SABS 1200 for their roadworks and that kind of thing. So it needs a community effort. Everyone needs to open the book and just use it and come up with comments. And of course reach out to colleagues. You can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with colleagues who are more familiar with certain chapters than others.
Just for my understanding, then Koto is then falls under who's responsible in the authority ultimately? Is that the Department of Transport?
Yes.
Okay. So they obviously, as the main custodian, need to make sure that it gets essentially enforced throughout the country as well.
Yeah. So under Koto, you've got various committees. There's the Road Materials Committee, RMC. There's the Roads Coordinating Committee. I think Quibus from staff would actually be able to comment more accurately than I. But I think the important message is the only way, it's like eating the elephant. You've got to use the document to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Quibus, would you want to comment from a SAF point of view?
Chair, I can just add that there's a lot of frustration among members about the whole Koto process. And it is something that needs, the problem is, one, the standard is not out there to use. And secondly, if it's not there, then everybody is doing their own thing. And that is very worrisome. So I think somehow we need to push for this, it's Koto and RCB, because it gets first approved as a draft standard, for instance, and then ultimately to Koto, and then it goes to RCB to be finally endorsed as a draft standard. And then it takes another 2 years. I see the mention of 1 year, but I think it's normally 2 years.
Yeah.
To receive all the comments and get the draft standard applied and tested as feedback, and then to be finalized. So yes, that's a very important process, but it's stagnant at the moment. It's very frustrating.
So I guess also the main key thing then also, Cobus, is that I think when these things do come up for review, that I think us as the engineers working within the space, the practitioners within the space, we need to get involved and raise the comments and questions, and I think once it's adopted, to make sure that we make use of it. So I guess it's our responsibility as well to get in and get involved as well. Yeah. We've got now Hans. Do you want to come through, Hans? I've got your hand.
Yeah, thanks. I just wondered, on your comment earlier, your question, how does it, how does this actually, how do these specifications actually meet the, where does it get implemented? And what we see just from a road science point of view is that there are very good standards in place in South Africa and in SADC. The standards are world class. The challenge that we see with road science specifically is that the main contractor, the guy who actually builds the road, bit of a gap there. They see the specification, on their bill of quantity, and then start implementing or start looking for procurement of road signs from different manufacturers. And that's where there's a bit of a gap. There's a lot of knowledge from SANRAL point of view. There's a lot of knowledge on the Department of Transport, and obviously on the other side, there's a lot of knowledge in terms of the road sign manufacturers, the reflective sheeting, and those guys. There's a bit of a gap where in terms of specifications from the main contractor in place, and then obviously making sure that the signs that are eventually put up, signs, road markings, I would include barrier restraint systems, is that meets the minimum standard. And I think that's why SARTSMA and its members are very keen to be involved in discussions like this, where we can contact or be in contact directly with consulting engineers that are involved in prescribing or writing these specifications for these for different applications. The standards are there. The challenge is we would like to ask consulting engineers reach out to the guys to SARTSMA members that know, that can help and can assist with the implementation of these specs. Thanks very much.
No, thanks, Hans. And then just maybe a follow-up on that one. It was a question that I also then jotted down, I think, when we had a presentation early on. So when it comes to now the look, what I'm picking up is then it comes down to also the quality control and making sure that as much as you have the specs, that the contractors are actually meeting the spec, but then also dependent then, and the engineer has also the responsibility to make sure that when it comes to signing off of anything, even a small thing like a road sign, shouldn't be seen as anything insignificant. That you need to have the proper quality control documents and sign-offs. So, and I think what this thing points down to is that now the industry as a whole, how much of the industry would you say is affiliated with SARTMA? Is there a gap? And what other advice can you give an engineer to make sure that we are also compliant at the end of the day, Hans?
I would say, from a road signs manufacturer point of view, all the suppliers of reflective sheeting, which are all global manufacturers, they're all represented at SARTMA, and they all supply SABS approved materials into the country, and it's pretty well regulated. From a road signs manufacturer, I would say about 50% of the manufacturers in South Africa are represented at SARTMA. There is a gap. We'd like to have all of our members involved. We'd like to, build closer ties with consulting engineers, where the big gap in science for us is, as I mentioned before, is the bill of quantity, and that's where the original specifications are written to South African specifications, not just copy and paste from old bill of quantities that come from 1970. So, and I think that's where the challenge lies for us as SARTSMA, is to build enough knowledge so that the specifications that are written in large road building contracts are the right specifications for the right application, because the technology is there.
Yeah. Is this do you have any how can I say is a little webinar or training or anything that you would have in this light, Hans? Or maybe that's something that through SAIC we can use just to, and myself as SAIC Knowledge Trailblazer, to try and educate the industry as a whole. Is there something you might have that we could maybe work on together, Hans?
Absolutely, yes. So we've been involved with SAIC within the Pretoria region, I think it was, where Gary did a presentation, and it's for me it's about more of the basic theory of reflectivity. What do road signs need to look? What do road studs need to look like? What do barrier restraints need to look like? Okay, those specific circumstances that we spoke about for heavyweight trailers, the height, difference in height for a driver of a truck versus a driver of a car. Why do we need the different types of reflective sheeting in the country? Why is there a different specification for a freeway to a 60-kilometer zone? What are the different options so that the engineers can have, know what the difference is when specifying for large contracts? We do have that training available. We'd love to get involved with that kind of thing, where we can talk to everybody that is involved with the writing of these specifications. Yes, in short, we have very nice presentations to do, and but prefer to do it in forums where there's a more of an open discussion than it's just a lecture, because a lecture is easy. But does it really hit the spot? And I think within SAIC, if we can get involved on a deeper level, smaller groups, absolutely yes.
Yeah, so something that we can then discuss offline together with Uncle Tom. And if there's Andrew, when we do a second follow-up of the fireside chat, maybe a discussion for future as well. Peter, I've got your hand. You can come through as well.
Thank you. Yeah, just to emphasize, and again, what Hans has said, as an association, I think one of our responsibilities is to try and spread the gospel for our members. And in terms of that, every reasonable opportunity that's presented to us, we would greatly appreciate, and we are always willing and happy to provide the necessary information to groups and whomever might feel that they would like to gain further knowledge in terms of these matters. Thank you.
No, thanks for that, Peter. So colleagues, we are coming on to 18:07. We planned, for this to close at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to look at one final common question, and then we'll then close the session officially. I've got some final closing notes that I want to make, and then I'll hand over to Uncle Tom. And then if we still want to continue with discussions with the panel members online, if they're still willing, we can just maybe run on a few extra minutes. But let's just take one final common question. I'll take it from William Clutie. The effect of the freight vehicle change and road design mismatch is also prevalent in small rural towns. The expertise is not always present in these areas, I take it, regards to suitable maintenance needed. If it is accepted now that heavy vehicles and loads will be the norm for the foreseeable future, do we design our local roads to the same requirements as national ones, or is it already the case not yet needed or feasible? So in essence, I think the question being that when it comes to smaller towns and rural towns, should we then design them to the same spec as national roads because of the heavy vehicles that might come from that side? And I take it it could be case by case, dependent on the type of commodity that might run through those small towns. And I think maybe the question may be more suited to your side, Andrew. You did give us quite a vast overview in terms of roads that you are taking over as SANRAL and the gravel roads. And from our discussion, I can also recall, Andrew, that the more and more of the provincial roads are coming over to yourself as SANRAL. And so I think this becomes a real challenge for you. So just some guidance on that for the young engineers and engineers that are online, Andrew. You on mute, Andrew?
With regard to the question from William Clutie, I did actually put something in the chat.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a constantly moving target. We adopt provincial roads in the Eastern Cape. I think it's a lot less prevalent in the Western Cape. and it's less prevalent in KZN, where their provincial roads department still seem to have their maintenance under control. And yeah, it's a symptom of I guess political decision making as opposed to technical decision making. You know, SANRAL's got give or take 200 engineers, and we're running a network that's now 4, 5. It might end up being 6 times the size it was when SANRAL started. So to see SANRAL as this magic bullet or silver bullet where we do manage to spend our budgets and we do manage to deliver, it's coming at a cost in that you know you can only keep loading so much on the camel's back.
Yeah, no, definitely, and yeah, I guess case by case, it just depends on the nature of the day. So colleagues, just my summation of today's discussion. Or thank you to our two speakers, Garth and Andrew, and Andrew being our champion in terms of road and bridge engineering. So my summation being that roads are quite vital to our economy. It connects people, communities, and businesses. There's a lot of need for research in updating the standards. Engineers need to ensure that all contractors and material suppliers are affiliated with the correct authorities in association to maintain quality and safety. And I mean, it's a small thing like a road stud. We shouldn't see it as a small little item. It's a safety equipment at the end of the day. And as engineers, we are bound to ethics. When it comes to, when we get registered and we go to this profession, we sign all these codes of ethics. So even the smallest, nail, if a nail needs to be to a certain sand standard, make sure it complies, and then you take accountability for that. So again, what I'm trying to emphasize is that we shouldn't see certain elements as a non-issue. Treat everything as important. Yeah. So also, what you to pick up is that the original use of roads is not the same as when we originally started. Traffic behavior has changed over time. This usage has changed over time, so it's very dynamic. Can be a bit of a challenge sometimes to predict what to expect. And then yeah, so again, need to get the rail system back online. So that we can improve the safety on the roads. So that's a much more longer term discussion. And yeah, use standards that have been approved and don't do your own thing. So that's my high level summation in terms of what I've captured on the side. Maybe closing comments from our panelists and invited guests online. I'll start from top going down. So Andrew, any closing comments from your side?
No, I think you've given us a very nice platform. I appreciate it. Hopefully, those who haven't been involved in road engineering now know that road engineering is a real thing.
Yeah,
it's challenging. It's good fun, but as you said earlier, it's critical to our economy, and we have to we have to maintain our assets. If I can finish it that way, yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you, Andrew. Garth?
Just a comment from a Swartsman perspective. The website's there, swartsman.co.za. Let anyone who wants to contact us come through. I mean, we're talking about principles, not product. If they want to get specific, all the members are on the various websites or on the website, so they can follow up. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who, particularly about road restraint systems, which is my particular baby. So I'm happy to do that at any time.
No, thank you, Garth. Hans?
Like Garth's road restraints, I'm probably there for road signs. Anybody need any information on road signs, how to specify, check out our websites. We'll gladly help.
No, thanks, Hans. Kobus?
Thanks. Yeah, the Road Federation is there to promote sound policies, and we do that through our committees. So I would invite everybody to join a committee. And if there's an issue that you feel passionate about, help us to drive it, and let's stand together. And of course, we are a very important education and training platform that we various courses that we offer. So that's your opportunity to improve your skills and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Cobus. And yeah, a lot of training that's being offered by SOF, a very useful training there as well. Peter, your closing comments? You unmute. There you go.
Apologies.
No worries.
This machine of mine is not playing ball. Yes, from a Swartsma perspective, we're very grateful for this reality in terms of being provided a platform just to inform yourselves of what we are doing, what our intent is, and as you said very rightly so, Takia, even the smallest item is an important one, and each one of those items forms part of a life-saving program, doesn't it? And at the end of the day, yeah, I like to think that we in the business of saving lives and making a difference.
No, correct.
Yeah, and thank you to Hans and Garth for providing a platform and inputs on behalf of SARTSO. It's much appreciated. We look forward to further interactions with yourselves. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. And so a final thank you to my panel members and invited guests from SARTSMA, SOF, and SANRAL. So Uncle Tom, over to you. Hopefully next time we can have a nice little fire on the side, just to go with the theme of Fireside Chat. Thanks, Uncle Tom.
No, thank you to Keir and to all our speakers and contributors to the session this evening. Greatly appreciated. There's lots of learning and interaction takes place. We are stronger together rather than as individual entities, and I think we already do a lot of work together. Since we are talking predominantly those in the road sector here, the next Road Pavements Forum, which is a collaboration between SARF, Sabita, CSR, SAICI, and various other entities, is scheduled for the 30th of May. Please watch your diaries or calendars for that event. I did post 2 other SAICI events. The one, although aimed at students, it's a good thing for professionals to revisit the EXA Code of Ethics and understand how ethics applies in our industry, given the entities that are tending towards more corruption than actual correction. But you're welcome to join one of those sessions, even though we target them at students. I think Takalani Netshepali, I saw, was in the session. She's the champion for our ethics panel. And then later in the month, we've got our IP Showdown winners. They've both from Wits University, who won their research project dissertation at the IP Showdown. We'll presenting our SAICI SOS. And then looking further ahead, just so you don't lose it, so Takir's Knowledge Trailblazer activities are always on the 2nd Thursday. The last Thursday of the month is the SOS events, and in July we have the update on the Msikaba River Bridge. Andrew will know it quite well as being a big SANRAL project, but I think they are now casting some of the deck elements. Large suspension bridge, 95 meters above the riverbed. So that'll be quite interesting. And yeah, we look forward to engaging further with all of you. For those of you who are here primarily for the CPD, the event is CPD validated. We use an automated system. So as long as your email address was accurate and your name's been correctly spelt with capitals and not lowercase, the system will generate your certificate, which will get to you within the next week or so. It does sometimes go to spam or junk mail, but just look out for CPD certificate at saici.org, which is where it comes from. And obviously, we will also register the event on the EXA website for those of you who need to renew your registration. But to you and the team, as always, thanks very much for the time. And next time I shall see what I can do about that fire. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
No, thank you, Uncle Tom.
Thanks,
looking forward to the fire. Thanks, yeah. I'll hold on for another few minutes until 18:30. If anyone else wants to ask any other questions, so this becomes the informal chat. So colleagues also want to hang on, you're more than welcome to. I might be pushing my panel members a little bit, but let's just see if there's 1 or 2 little questions that we can just take. So the session's officially closed, but we'll then have a few informal discussions if anyone would like to still ask a question.
Takir, can I just ask something? Loretta was looking for a telephone number. I don't know if she was looking for Andrew's or mine.
Okay. Loretta, if you can just confirm, whose number are you looking for? Let me just see. Yeah, if you can just pop it in the chat.
Andrew's given it. Andrew's given it his. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, it was Andrew's. Okay, cool.
No, thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
I will leave now. Thank you.
You may. No, thanks. Thanks, Clovis. Much appreciated. I see
Thank
there's a
you.
comment in the question in the comment, or where do we get updates for other events? So as Uncle Tom alluded to, he's given an indication of the plans going forward. From our side, as the SciC Knowledge Trailblazer, we do have a schedule we put out, but it's not specifically cast in stone. So it's between myself and our committee members. We still need to finalize who will go next and whatnot. And there's a discussion that we are planning to have, for example's sake, on mentoring. So myself, Andrew, and Alison Lawless, we had a nice discussion on Monday. So they, as much as I tried to pull them early, they said no, rather later on the year. So just to say that no, we have a bit that is lined up on our side, but we're just finalizing the schedule. We do have, I think we might touch on either water engineering or concrete engineering next, but just keep an eye out, in terms of your emails when SANRAL does, not SANRAL, SciC sends out the notification. You'll then pick up that on that side. Okay, so I don't see any further comments, questions. If there's any other hands, let's give it a minute or so. Let me check the chat. Anything else in the chat? Okay, as I see, there's thank yous. Andrew, just this cross section you put out in the chat, can you just give us maybe just an insight in terms of what we're looking at on this cross section? You're on mute, Andrew.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's just something my brother-in-law sent me, and it's quite interesting. It's just a bit of you want a bit of history of roads. There's a long history.
Yeah.
Nothing serious.
No worries. So just from a SANRAL point of view, your oldest road would be what, going back to 1910?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because one's not sure when it actually got built. I think that timeline I was giving was when things became sort of formalized from a national point of view as opposed to a provincial point of view, and then it was an oversight over the whole union or republic as it was. Yeah.
Would I then be correct to say that as SANRAL, do you have then roads that are deemed as a heritage roads?
Well, if we discover something, and in fact, I was visiting a site today in Kokstad where we're actually on a KZN DOT provincial road, and the EIA says once a month we're going to have a paleontologist on site to inspect whether anything gets uncovered. So heritage comes up often. I remember in the middle of the city of East London, there were old tram rails, if you like, a tramway that got completely covered by the pavement, but yet we had to preserve it, so no one can see it. But anything older than 60 years, often we get old culverts and things like that these days, many of them are older than 60 years. So that's what makes it interesting, is when you get the environmental folks and the Heritage Resource Association involved. Yeah.
And I need to be careful with my words, because I was going to say, I've got mixed feeling towards environment. Look, environmental is very important, but sometimes the guys can be a bit unpractical in my opinion. But anyways, I'll hold my comments to myself. But so interesting. So are you saying that you had to preserve the tram rails under the road now? And how did you do that? Did you just
well, I don't even know whether they gave them any special sort of cushioning. I think they just said, okay, they're the tram rails are. It's the last time we'll ever see them. We're going to cover them up with the road pavement, but they're still there. We haven't removed them.
Okay, interesting. But anyways, I guess it is.
Takir, there's a question from Vedanth that he feels wasn't answered, which is possibly for Andrew to answer regarding the concrete New Jersey barriers.
Okay.
Vedanth, in terms of sustainable, what do you mean by sustainable?
I don't know if you can. Will you be able to unmute Vedanth, Uncle Tom?
Yeah, I will. Let me just find him in the list here.
Let me see if I can also try and assist.
Concrete is the issue. So I think he's talking about the embodied energy and the fact that you got to blast half a mountain away to produce the aggregate, and you got to import cement or you got to make it yourself. So maybe he's talking about reducing, let's say, the resources required to manufacture such a barrier. Vedanth, I don't know the answer to that. Concrete tends to be pretty solid, but in terms of temporary barriers, of course, you get steel barriers that move around from construction site to construction site. But you've raised an interesting topic. Reinforced concrete designers design reinforced concrete, and it still seems to work pretty well. The one advantage, of course, of reinforced concrete is it creates a lot of jobs.
Yeah. Vedanth, I see we got you on, you've got your mic unmuted. We can unmute you now. Do you want to just maybe comment, Vedanth? You can open up your mic. I don't know if your question has been covered.
Thank you so much, Takir. It has been covered. I was expecting there to be more sustainable solutions by now, or more sustainable materials that we could possibly use. Because we see a lot of the Central New Jersey barriers being stored alongside our freeways as well. And it begs to question, will they be abandoned there at some point? Should there be some changes in governance and ruling? Will we find those elephants lying all over the place? Might I add? Thank you so much, man.
No, thanks, Vedanth. Andrew, would you want to maybe comment?
I'm going to hand this over to Garth. His hand has been up. I think he's been quite keen to climb in on the answer.
Yeah.
For the response.
First of all, to answer Vedanth on the sustainability, there are two systems when you let's look at barriers. There's a steel system and a concrete system. There's more energy that goes into steel than goes into concrete if you really want to look at green concrete. It becomes quite an interesting exercise. The other problem you have if you compare, let's call it steel guardrail to concrete, the steel gets hit and it's bent and it's got to be replaced. So it's a constant recirculation. If you look at all of the sandrail barriers that are out there, and I shouldn't say this in public forum, but they can actually be used in place of the steel guardrail because it's there, it's paid for, and it's also a higher containment level. So there's an argument for using all of those barriers that are sitting out stuck here, there, and everywhere. They've just got to be properly installed, and once they're properly installed, they will do their job. So there is a future use, and there's no maintenance going forward from that.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Garth. So at least something just to keep in mind and think about. And just maybe one other aspect, when it comes to sustainability and green energies, and just if I can just touch on it, because it's something that I myself, when it comes to green hydrogen, that I've been advocating, and just a different way of thinking is, so to say. So the one when it comes to green hydrogen and green energies, what you find these days is that there's more and more adoption of green energies and hydrogen in different sectors. And the one thing that I've been contemplating and just giving some views and opinion on is that how can we decarbonize the construction sector? What you find now is that equipment can start running on battery technology. If you've got now a hydrogen, sort of like a hydrogen combustion engine or just a fuel cell. So if you're, and for example, it's like I'm not sure if everyone is aware, Anglo Plat have got a mining truck that runs on hydrogen. And so if a huge 600-ton machine can run on hydrogen, I mean, who's to say small equipment can't run on it? So meaning that what you might foresee potentially going forward or in the future is that when it comes to now the mining of construction materials, that could be done in a green way. And if you can do the collective materials in a green way, then you manufacture it in a green way. Technically, you might end up with green cement, green aggregates, green steel, green everything in essence. And then even coming down to your construction site, you can run off solar energy, wind energy. You can run off hydrogen as well. And so meaning that you decarbonize your construction site. So at least then the building or the road or whatever you construct at the end of the day can truly be green, because the source of the material has been done in a green way and the transport is done in a green way, and construction is done in a green way. So just some food for thought. Obviously, the cost right now is a bit astronomical, but I mean, any new technology when it comes in does become cheaper over time. But again, yeah, just food for thought. I see we've got a hand up, and I've unmuted your mic, Mehboob. You can come through with your comment question. Just unmute on your side, Mehboob. There you go.
Yeah, thanks. Good evening. Was it night already in PE?
Nighttime this side, yeah.
Have we been adequately addressed in terms of road rehabilitation and riding quality in terms of this whole road spectrum? Because we started with the roads and the history of roads, and then on to system restraints and markings, but surfacing and surface textures, that may be a subject of another Trailblazer.
Yeah, something we can look at in the future. No, we didn't cover it specifically. We didn't cover it specifically, but we can look at it, as a future topic. But Andrew, do you want to just comment on road texture and riding quality?
Yeah, well, it's not my field of expertise. Hi, maybe nice to chat to you again. But I mean, the whole world of pavement engineering is huge, and I specifically didn't want to go down any particular avenue, but Takir, yeah, that's the heart and soul of our asset. Road rehabilitation obviously is a constant thing. At any one time, SANRAL's got 1,000 registered projects, and we've got something like 50 different types of projects in terms of how we could, whether they're OPEX or CAPEX. Yeah, riding quality, I go from site to site these days, and it's always such an interesting debate. They're building a CRCP alongside another contract, and they sort of saying, yeah, but the job alongside hasn't got such good riding quality. Ours is much better. So you get that sort of banter going on. But the specifications cover these things, and at the end of the day, that's what the public feel. It's an extremely important debate. The IRIs and so on, and what's quite nice for my graduates is for them to get involved in those debates on site. If the contractor doesn't meet the specification, what happens? Do you reduce his payment? Do you ask him to rip it all up and rebuild it? These are the interesting parts of construction.
Yeah. No. Thanks for that, Andrew. Mehboob, I take it you covered from your side.
Yes, thank you much.
Okay. No, thanks.
Takir, I think you need to let your panelists escape now and find a bed for Andrew and some food for everybody else. So
yes.
I think if you can wrap up now.
Yeah. No, I was going to wrap up now. No, thanks, Uncle Tom. I'm hoping that the extra hour, half an hour, gives us an extra CPD points, because there are at least 90 of us that are still here, almost 100. But I'll leave that in your hands, Uncle Tom. So colleagues, for those who stayed on just for the extra time, thank you. So we'll then wrap up the discussion. Thank you very much to my panel members. Thank you to everyone for joining. And until we see you next time, second week of next month, with another topic. We'll come to you with, we'll confirm a topic very soon, so that just to build that interest and excitement. But thank you very much for coming to our first Fireside chat. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Takir.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all. Thanks, Takir. All the best.
Thank you, guys.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.